Welcome to Supporting Your Children in Managing Anxiety this school year. My name is Heather Namor. I am coordinator for student wellness and school culture here at County Office of Education. And just want to acknowledge some members of our team. Rachel Wagner and Mata Madrigal Weiss are here. And we won't have time for questions at the end, but if you do have questions, they are here and can answer those in the Q&A. And I will get started. So what I'm going to share with you this evening are these learning objectives. So first, just really getting on the same page around the definition of anxiety and learning what are some of the signs and symptoms. As parents, how do we know? What are some things to be looking out for? And then the bulk of this presentation is really on strategies to support your children in managing anxiety, whether they're children or teenagers. And the strategies I'll be sharing with you tonight come from neuroscience, cognitive behavioral therapy, and mindfulness-based stress reduction. And they are also very helpful for us adults in managing anxiety. So please know the strategies I share tonight are great for us, and they're also for sharing with our own children. And then I'll be sharing some specific resources to support your teens and children with anxiety at the end of the presentation. So to get rolling, let's start with what anxiety is and defining it so we can have a shared understanding of what it is. So anxiety is a feeling of worry, nervousness, or unease, and it's typically about an imminent event or something with an uncertain outcome. So what anxiety is, it's really the body's reaction to perceived danger or important events. Important to know, anxiety is not dangerous, it's adaptive, and it's a part of life. Society has kind of placed a negative label on anxiety, and it's important for us to know as parents that anxiety can help us and help our kids keep us safe, keep us healthy, and it can motivate us to solve everyday problems. So it essentially serves as a protective mechanism. And just being able to teach our kids that anxiety can be our friend. And so if, for example, your child is feeling real nervous about a test, well, that's kind of good because it means that they know they're not ready. And as soon as they start studying, that ease and worriness can calm down and go away. So to also have a shared understanding of what a mental health disorder or mental illness is, I want to share this so we can also be on the same page, because often some of the signs and symptoms we see in our children are typical adolescent development. They're normal signs and symptoms of just all of the changes they're going through with their bodies, with their emotions, with their mental health, everything. So what we have here is a working definition. It's going to affect a person's thinking, emotional state, and behavior. And a mental health disorder, it's going to impact our child's ability to do these three things: work or attend school, carry out daily activities, and engage in satisfying relationships. I like to refer to these as their ability to just live, laugh, love, and learn, the 4 L's. So always go back to this when we're wondering, should I be paying more attention? Could this be a sign? Is it impacting these three things? So what we know is a mental health disorder is going to, be more severe. It's going to be more persistent. And if it's not treated, it will continue to move along that continuum to unwell and cause pain and distress in one's life. And so what we know about anxiety, that the median age of onset for an anxiety disorder is 6 years old. So it can happen below 6 years and above 6 years, but that's the median. All right, so some quick facts and stats on anxiety. So it is the most prevalent mental health disorder in childhood and adolescence. And we know that anxiety disorders will affect 1 in 3 youth by the age of 18. And approximately 32% of our youth, ages 13 to 18, have an anxiety disorder. And out of the 32%, 8% are severely impacted. So going back to that definition, severely impacted their ability to live, laugh, love, and learn every day. So before COVID, before the pandemic, we already saw that anxiety was on the rise. And now here we are post pandemic and everything that's happened these last several years. We almost have the sense of shared anxiety, collective anxiety, and many of us are struggling with anxiety at different levels. But the great news is that anxiety disorders are some of the most easiest mental health disorders to treat effectively. And we'll be talking about many of those strategies today. So the intersection between anxiety and depression, want to share this because often anxiety and depression are co-occurring. 50% of our youth that have anxiety disorders also have another mental health disorder, and most often it is depression. So we see that one often increases the risk of another disorder over time. And so the intersection of anxiety and depression in the dark area in the middle are shared signs and symptoms that we may see of both disorders. And so it's common in teenagers to find that they're depressed as well as anxious. And in part, it's because an anxious lifestyle can be so distressing or so limiting that it can lead to depression. And so just understanding that we have that comorbidity that can happen. And when adolescents have depression alongside social anxiety, that's strongly associated with outcomes such as suicide ideation and attempts. So things to be aware of there. And then social media. This is a hot topic for parents. What is the connection? What's that link with social media and anxiety? So there's a lot of research being done on social media and mental health in general. And one thing we know from the research is that the higher emotional investment in social media is strongly correlated with higher levels of anxiety. And so what we know is that social media is directly connected to mental health, and particularly with our girls. And so we often will see that girls they're much more involved in the social media aspect. And so what do we do? What do we do as parents? And a lot of the experts, mental health experts will say, we'll delay giving our kids phones as long as possible. That's definitely one strategy. But what research has shown is that when we can have a healthy balance between in-person relationships, friendships, and online, that's kind of the magical balance of having healthy lifestyle and having that balance there. There's something actually that's called likes anxiety, and it's an actual type of anxiety disorder that's based on how many likes you get in social media. So just realizing that social media has its pros and cons. And when our young people are posting on social media, what are they posting? They're posting pictures of when they look good and when they're doing fun things and when they're with all their friends. And other youth see that and think, well, I don't look like that. I don't have all those friends. I don't get to do all those fun things. What's wrong with me? And it impacts self-esteem and feeling sense of worth and those kinds of things. And then just that FOMO, the fear of missing out and having that phone just connected to us all the time because we don't want to miss anything. And so that pressure to be available 24/7 can cause anxiety. All right, so jumping to some signs and symptoms around anxiety. So they typically fall in these three areas. And first, physical. We're more likely going to see our young people complain about physical elements as opposed to worries. And this is a reason why anxiety can often go unnoticed and be mistaken as a physical ailment. And anxiety is sometimes referred to as an invisible disorder because it often will present itself with physical symptoms. So you can see here the different kinds of things, the shortness of breath, the nausea, fatigue, muscle tension, headaches. And I know when my son was younger and he was afraid of sleeping in the dark, it took me a while to make that connection that coming into my room, I feel like I'm going to throw up. I feel sick. My stomach hurts. Connecting it to aligning it to an activity. And that activity was at night when he was going to bed. So as parents, we always want to look for those patterns and align it with activities of what's going on during that time. Cognitive thoughts, exaggerated worry, may be really real to them, but not seem real to you, but it's real to them. It could be make it hard to focus in school because they're so worried they just can't have fun or relax, or they might miss many days of school because they feel sick, afraid, or tired. And then there's behavioral, and we can see different things here: being startled, limited life experiences, inability to sit still. What's key here is we don't want to address these as behavioral issues because that's not effective. Instead, we need to provide coping strategies so they can learn how to self-regulate and be able to tap into strategies so they can bring down that level of anxiety. So often anxiety, we think, well, yeah, anxiety is kind of just worrying all the time about everything. And I like this diagram because it really shows what does anxiety actually feel like in a person that's experiencing it as a mental health disorder. And we see sweating a lot, second guessing yourself, muscle tension, having the neck, the shoulder, just constantly feeling tense, not knowing what it feels like to truly relax, trouble sleeping, chest pain, overthinking things, increased heart rate, your mind and body refusing to cooperate no matter what you know is rational. So again, we see a lot of physical symptoms here as well. And then what is the difference between anxiety in children, in our elementary age kids, and then with teenagers? So with children, it tends to be things more like having anxiety around animals, insects, the dark, monsters under the bed, or something bad happening to our parents. My son had a fear of dogs when he was younger, and he would freak out. If he saw dogs on the street, he would literally panic. And that was an external thing that impacted him. Now, anxiety in teenagers, it's going to impact these three things. So it's typically around performance. A lot of anxiety is geared towards perfectionism or needing to just do their absolute best. And so even when parents report that they urge kids not to stress over college admissions or figuring out what they're going to do for college, teenagers still say they feel this immense pressure to get those straight A's. There was a study done with a high level of students being admitted to inpatient care for anxiety. And what this research found was the youth were in there saying things like, I can't decide what college to go to. I can't decide what to major in school. Having this immense pressure on academic pressure brought them into inpatient. So really, really working with our kids to make sure that they know that they doing anything we can to let those decisions happen over time at their when they're ready for that. And then that perceived. So every student really typically has some level of focus on how they are seen by others, how they're perceived, how they look. And sometimes that can be a bit extreme, and that can result in social anxiety, just excessively worrying about being incompetent or maybe doing something embarrassing. So everyday anxiety or something more, how do we know? So all of us have a normal reaction to stress, where with an anxiety disorder, it's going to come out of nowhere. It's often triggered by a stressor. And so, if I'm feeling anxious about presenting tonight, that's going to be the stressor. Where an anxiety disorder, it's actually just ongoing and it lasts weeks or months. So it has a start and ending point. With the disorder, it's going to interfere with that day-to-day life, that live, laugh, love, and learn. With general anxiety that we may all experience, it can be helpful or motivational. Like I was saying in the beginning, it serves as a protective mechanism. And with a disorder, it can have a real intense emotional response. So the strategies I'll be sharing today are really to help with these intense responses we may have. We're able to control our worrying. With a disorder, your worrying is uncontrollable. And lastly, it lessens or disappears when we're away from that stressful situation. And with the disorder, again, we're going to see those physical symptoms happening. So 5 ways us parents can help our kids manage anxiety. So first, just be accepting of our child's concerns and try to really gently correct misinformation about a situation and give them encouragement. Maybe help them do something small steps, baby steps, until they're less nervous about it. So if my son, with the fear of dogs, if I just avoided all areas and situations where there were dogs, how would he have overcome that? It's with those gradual baby steps to be able to overcome those fears. And so that's important. And then we don't want to avoid all things that cause anxiety. So again, just being able to um, be able to have learning to manage difficult situations, giving strategies to our kids to be able to manage those moments where we might be feeling overwhelmed. Be realistic, and we don't want to make promises. We can't promise our children that they'll never, be injured riding a bike, or they'll never fail a test, or they'll never have an embarrassing situation, because it will happen. But if we as parents can just confidently express our support for them when challenges come along, they'll feel less nervous, and just knowing that that support is there can be helpful. And be accepting of their feelings, even if it seems your child's anxiety is misplaced or doesn't really feel like it's real. We want to avoid making them feel bad for feeling anxious, but acknowledge their feelings. And you can say something like, I can tell you're feeling nervous about trying to ride your bike, but I'm going to be there next to you while you do it. And then don't lead them to anxiety, because sometimes well-intentioned parents can ask questions like, are you worried about passing that test? Or are you scared to go to the doctor? Instead, we can try asking more neutral questions like, are you feeling ready to take your test? Or how are you feeling about going to the doctors this week? So those are open-ended questions. And then I love this quote: the treatment for anxiety isn't to make the fear go away, it is to manage the fear and tolerate uncertainty. So what can parents do to help their kids manage the fear and tolerate uncertainty? So we'll start with some grounding and orienting strategies. And so what these do are, they're really a way for anxiety to, it can make it hard for us to focus on what's happening around us. And if our worries, they distract us from doing things and being present, then we can tap into grounding activities that can orient us and bring us to the here and now. So it's really grounding, turning our physical presence, turning into it, help neutralize anxiety, the distress, and all that's going on. And so I'm going to share with you some grounding and orienting strategies. So the first one is called Name It to Tame It. And so the first element of emotional intelligence is identifying the feelings you are having. But emotions can be hard to pin down, and they can be layered and complex. So, often when we engage with our kids or with each other, as parents and adults, how are you? And we're very limited in what we say: good, fine, okay. And you can see in this diagram here, there are so many different ways to express our feelings that are going on. And so being able to remind our children that anxiety, it's an emotional reaction. And in order to manage the anxiety, we first have to identify our emotions before we can manage them. And so you can see here, scared, there's so many other words: rejected, helpless, submissive, foolish, weak, insignificant. These are all different layers of what scared might mean. So when we have a more accurate description of how we are feeling and tapping into what our kids are feeling, we can better meet them where they're at as adults. And so using this, our office, we cut these out, laminate them, and have them in our offices so we can be mindful about tapping into the feeling wheel and figuring out what are some ways I'm feeling that I better describe than the general term. So name it to tame it. So before we can tame it, we need to identify that emotion before we can manage that emotion. Okay, the next strategy is a simple one, and it's called cold water strategy, which sounds really good because it's very hot tonight. And so what we know is that cold water can be kind of like a shock to our system. And often with anxiety, it really can get the best of us. And how can we kind of shock our system to help get back who we are and be able to kind of relieve those intense emotions we're feeling? And so it could be taking a cold shower. It could be just grabbing some ice cubes and holding them in the palm of our hand. It could be running ice water over our wrist and those pulse points, right? That can really help. Getting an ice pack out of the freezer and just putting it into those pulse points can be helpful. So ice cold water can be a great go-to strategy to tap into for those intense emotional reactions to anxiety. So this grounding technique, it's pretty popular with youth. We work with youth across our state and county to inform our work. And this is one they always say they really like to have as a go-to. And it's called 5-4-3-2-1 coping technique. So it's really just a simple mindfulness activity which forces a spinning, anxious mind to just reorient ourselves back to the present moment. And it's based on the 5 senses, which are all self-soothing strategies that's distracting and intentionally puts focus on something else instead of obsessing over our worries and our thoughts. And so basically we would ask our kids, tell me 5 things you can see in the room, and whatever it is, the picture on the wall, the clock, the sun. 4 things you can feel. It can be the ground below my feet, the pencil in my hand, the fan blowing. 3 things you can hear: the birds outside chirping. It could be the sound of the fan. I'm using fan because I have a fan here. 2 things you can smell. It could be fresh cut grass. It could be the food cooking in the kitchen. And then 1 thing you can taste. And then I always like to offer up just a deep breath after this activity. So this is great in helping manage overwhelming or intense emotions for our young people and our teenagers. All right, so opposite of ice, heat can also be a helpful strategy. And so basically what we're doing is we're rubbing our hands together. And as we do that, that creates just that natural heat in our hands. And you can feel it kind of generating between your hands. And once your hands feel warm, we can place those on different parts of the body. And so with anxiety, a lot of the tension I was saying earlier is in the neck or the shoulders, my jaws where I hold it. So putting the hands there and that warmth coming from your palms can calm us down. And again, we can infuse breath with this and take 3 breaths with that. This is a good winter one. I like the ice one for the summer, which is feeling like summer today. So hands of fire. Okay, so this is called In This Moment, and it's really a simple meditative phrase to repeat anytime you feel anxious or unsettled, or when you find yourself worrying about the future, or you're ruminating about the past. And about 98% of the time, we know this to be true, that right here, right now, everything is okay. 98% of the time, this is pretty much true. So what this phrase can do, I apologize, I forgot to turn my phone off in the background. This phrase can reground us in the present moment. And one thing to do is to focus on the word okay. It is fine for life to be okay a lot of the time. And also key to remembering how to use this. So where can we have this for our kids? Can we print it out and put it on the refrigerator for them? Can it be a saver on their phone? Something so where they can grab it and be able to just tell themselves right here, right now, everything is okay. Our team uses this regularly. It's very helpful. It brings us back to the current moment and reminds us that right now, yeah, I'm worrying about tomorrow, I'm worrying about the next hour, but right now, everything's okay. Okay, so breathing, it is my absolute favorite strategy for anxiety. And breathing is one of the best strategies that can serve as an anchor for us. When we're anxious, we tend to take quick, short breaths. And what that does is it feels more anxiety. So breathing invites feelings of peace, acceptance, accepting whatever is happening in the moment. And it's a powerful way to quiet down our emotions. And what we know is that with more oxygen, the chemistry of our brain changes. It blocks effects of stress. It restores our ability to think clearly. It's almost just like setting a reset button. It's the fastest way to shift intense emotions. And by doing that, we're also shifting our experience. So just breathing can change our brain. And within 30 seconds, we can be relaxed. And the great news, it's free, it's available 24/7, and it's easy for us to do. So this is a midway point, which is perfect. So I'm gonna invite us all to just participate in 2 rounds of what is called 4-7-8 breathing. So you can see the diagram here, breathing in through your nose for the count of 4, hold your breath for 7, and we're gonna exhale at the count of 8. So I invite everyone to participate at your comfort level and have your feet both grounded on the floor. And I'm gonna pull up a visual. Can you see that, Rachel?
Yes.
Thank you. It's working. Yay. So we'll do 2 rounds together at the start of the 1, breathing in. So we'll breathe in. We're holding. And we're breathing out. Breathing in. Holding. And breathing out. I hope that felt as good to you as it did to me. It's always such a great little reset to just tap into as parents. You know, an anxious parent is going to create an anxious child, and we have anxiety as well. So it is so important for us to model strategies, model ways to manage our anxiety, and our kids they'll pick up on that. And I blame myself today that my son, his anxious habit is he bites his cuticles. And it took me years to realize, where did he get that? Oh, I do it. So I've had to be really mindful that I have to stop that. It's one of my affirmations, and it's so powerful, the modeling. So when your kids see you tapping into breathing, they'll want to do it too. And for those of you that have young children, elementary age, you can take a candle, and then a rose, and you have them breathe in the sweet smelling rose, and you have them blow out the candle, imaginary, of course. So that's a great one for our young children. All right, so shifting gears on strategies. These are really strategies for thinking differently. And with anxiety, inflexible thinking contributes to excessive anxiety, and depression can make it difficult to step outside our emotional responses to see things as they really are. So how can we use our thinking and how we think to manage anxiety? So what we know is that before going further, let's first talk about positive self-talk. And so just want to distinguish that positive self-talk isn't ignoring the negative or unpleasant aspects of our life. Instead, it's flipping the narrative. So we can approach these issues in a more positive and productive way. And when practiced regularly, positive self-talk has the ability to reduce stress and anxiety, increase happiness, encourage healthy habits, promote self-confidence, promote self-love, and decrease negativity and psychological symptoms. So as a result, this can enhance our psychological and physical well-being, our coping skills across our lifespan. So we might even notice improvements in our immune system, our relationships, and school or work performance, because that's the power of positive self-talk. And so one thing that we do with that self-talk is we can get into thinking traps. And there's certain types or patterns of thoughts that tend to trap us in anxiety, and they're called thinking traps. So whatever thinking traps we tend to fall into, the first step is we have to recognize which personal trap do we tend to fall into, or do our kids fall into. So the first is all or nothing, where we're only seeing possible outcomes as extreme. So in reality, most are usually in the middle somewhere. So everything's either going to be really, really good or really, really bad. And then catastrophizing, imagining the worst case scenario, no matter how unlikely it is. So this example, it's a little dated. The pandemic is never going to end, ever. And I know it felt that way, but it kind of, I don't know if it ended, but it kind of ended. And so that's that catastrophizing. Overgeneralizing, where we make sweeping judgments about ourselves or others based on only one or two experiences. And again, we're seeing those words of always or never. So I got a C on my first test. I'm going to fail this whole course. Don't those sound familiar? Because our teens, they talk in these extremes, always, never. And then mind reading, where you believe you know what others are thinking without even having any real evidence. And we're actually assuming it's going to be negative. So I know they're gossiping about me in that post I made on Instagram last night. So it's called mind reading. And then lastly, negative filter, where we're only focusing on the negative. And so what if I scored 2 goals? I also missed a penalty kick. We lost and it's all my fault, right? So just really overlooking the positive and letting the negative take over. So the first step in getting to positive self-talk and really flipping this is being aware of the type of thinking trap we identify in our triggers with. So first strategy, SOS. This is a strategy we can use once we identify what thinking trap we fall into and use it to stop the negative talk. So when we catch ourselves saying, oh, everything's just never going to work out, we can tell ourselves SOS. And it's just stopping when we have a negative thought and then observing. We want to always non-judgmentally just reflect on what we're saying, think about where those thoughts might be coming from, and then shift, replace those thoughts with something positive, shift our thinking. We have the control and ability to do that. And so this is called SOS. Next strategy is called question your thoughts. So in reviewing the thinking traps, we can see that it is common to think only about extreme possible outcomes or worst case scenarios. There's another strategy to manage these, and it's called question your thoughts. It's basically starting with asking your child, is this worry realistic? Then, is this likely to happen? And then if the worst possible happens, what then? Could you handle that? What might you do? Is this true? Is it real, or does it just seem that way? And what might you do to prepare for whatever may happen? So you're basically walking them through the steps to the end of where they think it might result in. And while you're doing that, you're illustrating probably how much less likely it is to end the way they think it is by walking them through this. And you're helping them plan it through. In the rare case that does happen, you're helping them think through what I would do. And so it gives them a bit of ease, knowing that they've kind of thought it through. A real easy way to remember this is just when your child or teen's talking about their anxiety, you just say, and then what? And then what? And then what? And you're walking them through. They can also create a worry diary and write down their worries and thoughts and do it in this way as well. And then so much time, is spent on focusing on things we can't control. And why not save that time and energy to really focus on what we can control? The human mind seeks certainty and control, but it's hard to do that. So let's make peace with what's out of our control and create more mental energy for us to focus on what's within our power. So everything you see in the outer circle are things that are out of our control and we are not responsible for. And we can't control other people's ideas, their words, behaviors, and feelings. But everything in the inner circle, we do have control over. So teaching our kids that we can control our actions, words, thoughts, and opinions. We can control our mistakes, our boundaries, choices, and efforts, and our work ethic, our feelings, our self-care, and who we spend time with. And so there's a real simple way of doing this too, with the worrying that goes on and how to really physically put this down on paper. We can take a piece of paper, put a line down the middle. One side, you have them write all the things they may be worrying about, but they can't control. And then the things they worry about that they can control. And then they just put their energy and focus on the side of the paper of things they can control. Okay, set a worry time. So we tend to worry while we multitask, when we go to sleep at night, but we rarely give worry our full attention. So it just kind of continues endlessly. And so this is actually setting an appointment with ourselves to worry. You designate a block of time on your calendar in your day that's devoted to worrying. And during that appointment, you find a private spot and you set a timer to your liking of 10 to 20 minutes and you worry away. You can bring a list of worries to your meeting and worry. You just are devoting that time to worry. What experts tend to find, clinicians say, is that they usually end up not meeting the actual appointment because just knowing they have it carved out in their day gives them relief and settles their mind that they have that there. Another way, especially with our younger kids, we could create a worry jar or a worry book where children can write down what's bothering them. And during that designated worry time, they can pull those pieces of paper out of the jar. And when they're done, they put those back in the jar and say goodbye to their worries for the day. And then distractions. Really, essentially, everything I've shared with you today are distractions. And that is one way to create ways to disrupt the patterns of focusing on our worries and shifting to more positive things. So any way we can find a way to distract is a strategy for anxiety. So these are examples: listening to music or to a podcast. Our kids need that downtime to do those things: playing cards or a game, dancing, going for a walk, watching a new TV series or movie. These are all distractions. I always give the example of COVID tests. Back in the day when it was a little more nerve-wracking, when our kids had to take COVID tests and you have to wait that 15 minutes, and instead of just staring and worrying, putting it away and doing something like this to distract ourselves. And then often we found it was negative and thought all that time we would have spent worrying would have been for nothing. So distractions. Okay, I'm going to guide us now into everyday tips supporting your children's mental health. Just some takeaways here for general mental fitness for our kids to really instill that. Modeling openness, sharing our feelings and our successes, our failures are really ways that we can demonstrate to our children that it's safe to talk about our own feelings, our mistakes, our challenges that we have. So modeling that, meeting them where they're at. So when you're ready to talk to your child, or they're ready to talk to us, we plan activities together to do something, and then look out for those opportunities to be able to have those conversations, but not trying to have these conversations when they're not ready. So back to the emotions wheel, if they're feeling one of those disruptive feelings, then that's probably not the best time to have these conversations with our kids. Letting them fail. It's healthy to allow our kids to struggle and to fail and make mistakes. And that's how we learn, from making our mistakes. And so just making that a part of normalizing mistakes and learning from those mistakes, creating a safe space. So being able to create a safe space where we can listen non-judgmentally and really remain calm, and just letting them know we are here for them, right? So that space is safe. Sometimes being direct is best. So if you notice warning signs, shifts in behavior, personality changes, or maybe they're not sleeping at all, or sleeping way too much, or losing interest in their normal activities, we want to be direct and have those conversations with our kids and not wait. Let's be proactive. Stay connected to your pediatrician. We always say, starting with your pediatrician is the best way. If you're not sure what's going on, but you notice something might not be right, that's a great first step, because from there, they're able to help and figure things out. My daughter has anxiety, and her pediatrician has been so helpful in just trying out different things with her and being able to have those conversations. And so that's a great place to start. Including our kids in the solution. A lot of times they have better strategies than we do. And, the more our team works with youth across our county, they will enlighten us with things we never even thought of, or strategies or things that they do or support their peers or friends with, that are really valuable. So asking them, have you felt this way before? And what did you do then that might have been helpful? We don't want to assume. It's important not to make assumptions about what they might be anxious about, what their fears might be. So we want to just really, again, go back to that listening and finding opportunities to have those healthy conversations. Finding a mentor. So sometimes, it's not comfortable talking to parents about these kinds of things. So the more non-parent caring adults we can have in our child's life, the better. And it might be, one of my very best friends. My kids feel more comfortable talking to her sometimes over things. And I love that. Great. The more caring adults, the better. Apologize when we're wrong. Parents, we are going to mess up. And when we do, we don't want to overreact or make a big deal. Admit when we're wrong. We apologize. Again, it's giving our kids permission to make those mistakes too. Practicing what we preach. So just really, feeling like what we say is true and what we believe to be important, we're modeling that too. So if we're encouraging our kids to, see a doctor or see clergy or whoever we go to in our family, we also want to model that we are going to others for support as well. We're seeing our doctor and those kinds of things. Lastly, we want to stop stigma, because stigma is one of the biggest reasons why kids do not get connected to help, that us adults don't get connected to help. We have so much stigma around mental health, and we need to normalize it. We all have mental health. We all know someone in our family, close friends in our circle that are struggling or suffering with a mental health disorder, and that's okay. And we want to make sure we use language that's not scary, because scary words are going to elicit scary feelings. And we want to increase our mental health literacy. So I applaud you all for being here today. The more we learn and understand, the less fear we have around it, and the more we normalize it. So thank you for being here tonight. So I want to spend the last 10 minutes that I have talking about resources, because I want to leave you with resources. And the first one is MindShift. This is a fantastic app that is free, and it is specifically for anxiety. It's an evidence-based app that uses cognitive behavioral therapy strategies, all the similar strategies that were shared with you today. And youth can tap into this, adults as well, to really find out more about anxiety. They can put in their specific situations that they have fear or anxiety over, and it walks them through step by step how to reach overcoming those fears. They can check themselves to see where their level of anxiety is each day, and strategies. Thinking right, how do we instill that positive thinking, right? Going into those the positive thinking strategies. Chilling out, I talked about how important it is for distractions, just chilling out, decompressing, and doing those things. Inspiration, there's inspirational quotes. It's really great. And so this comes from Canada. They're a bit advanced over our country, but it's a fantastic app. And I share this with students and my own kids all the time, because it's a great go-to. All right, so this mental health screening, Mental Health America offers free screenings, and they are confidential, scientifically validated, and you can go in there, and I'm actually going to open it up for you. This is such a great way to be proactive and start the conversation with your kids. When my daughter wasn't sure what she had, I sent this to her and told her, take the youth mental health test. And she did. And that's how she identified she had anxiety. So what you're able to do is take these results, and it's a great starting point to have a conversation with your pediatrician or trusted friend, family member to begin the pathway to a plan for addressing mental health with your child. So this is hopefully opening up. Yep. So you see here, and the youth mental health test right here. This is for ages 11 to 17, and they can go in and take a test. It's not long. They answer questions and they hit submit, and then it tells them where they're at kind of on the continuum and gives some resources and information in relation to that. Parents can do a test for their own child. You can go here, take a test, and this is helpful for children under age 11 for parents to be able to take this test. So it's a great site to go to. I know there's often waiting lists and challenging to navigate mental health services and getting our kids to counseling, therapy, supports. So this is something we can do in the interim to get the ball rolling. And of course, there's all kinds of tests in there for us adults as well. This is our team guide to mental health and wellness, and our team created this to really get in the hands of middle and high school students and giving them all of the warm lines, the hot lines, the different specialized lines that youth can go to when they are feeling distressed, when they're feeling like they need to talk to a caring adult. We have things like the Trevor Project for our LGBTQIA youth. We have the teen line, and they can text. A lot of these, they can text, they can chat. But one of our goals really in our county is to get our youth really increase their mental health literacy, give them the tools and resources so they can support each other and support their friends, their family, and loved ones. What we continue to hear our youth say is, adults are great, but we often prefer to get help from our peers. And so building up that peer support, there are different ways to increase mental health literacy here. And our team has vetted free apps and different personalized mental health supports that they can tap into and use. And then for elementary age parents, we have taking care of our young person. So our young person's guide to wellness. And again, our team have vetted videos, apps, and strategies for wellness that you can tap into and learn how to support your younger kids at home to be mentally fit and well. And then we have our virtual wellness center, and this was created for staff in our schools, for students, and for parents. And it's really a safe space to just access support, take a break, rest, and refocus. And it really just gives strategies and articles and videos and ways we can support the well-being of all of us and tap into calming activities and tools to promote health and wellness. So you can go in there and, do fun things like coloring. And do I have the link on here? Oops, sorry, I didn't click that. Nope, I don't. There's a QR code you can scan here. Each of these sections are categorized by strategies for children, for teens, and for adults. So you can easily go in, and if you want to practice mindfulness or stress and anxiety or positive thinking, breaks them down for you by those three categories so you can easily tap into those on that website. And so these slides, you're going to have them, you're going to get them, and you're going to have links to all of the resources. And I'm also going to share my contact information. Feel free to reach out. We do have our website, which has a lot of resources for parents beyond what I shared here tonight, and making sure that you have all that information at your fingertips.